morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. And good evening, everyone, because we have the 3 time zones: the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. Not only the time zone that differs, but also weather differs greatly, from warm weathers to cold weather. So today I am absolutely delighted to be facilitating this talk with such a talented translator and interpreter, and honored to be introducing our guest speaker, who is also a scholar in translation and interpreting studies and linguistics in particular. Dr. Muhammed Gamal is an applied linguist with interest in audio-visual translation, forensic linguistics, conference interpreting. Dr. Gamal gained his qualifications in Cairo, California, and Sydney. And he is a senior diplomatic interpreter for the Australian federal government. So this is our speaker of today, guest speaker. We are really very honored and pleased. I am personally very pleased that he accepted our invitation. He will be speaking about audio-visual translation, giving an introduction to it, and then moving a little bit to some specialized stuff in this area. He will be speaking for almost 30 minutes, and then I will be glad to host a question and answer session. So without further ado, I hand it over to Dr. Gamal to start his presentation and, of course, say a few words by way of or as introductory remarks. You have the floor, Dr. Gamal.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone. I'm very actually indebted to Dr. Salhi for this invitation, and I am equally honored. Hello, Tunisia, and also welcome to my colleagues from other parts of the world as well. Audiovisual translation is my favorite topic, and I will start by way of introduction. I will talk about the history of audiovisual translation very briefly. This month, June 2020, is actually the 25th anniversary of the beginning of, the formal examination of audiovisual translation within academia. Universities started to look at it as audiovisual transfer, or the linguistic transfer of linguistic material after a conference that took place in France 25 years ago, exactly this month. Obviously, before that, audiovisual translation was well known and practiced. Almost every country, every national television had a center or a unit for linguistic transfer, the translation of foreign programs, films, documentaries, even commercials, interviews, and any audiovisual material, be it a footage, a clip. That was obviously before video clips and the wide usage of video material. In Egypt, for example, or in the Arab world in general, cinema came after a brief period of radio broadcasting. And when cinema came, it was silent. There was a short period, relatively about 10 to 12 years of silent cinema. And the first film in Arabic, Children of the Rich, Awlad al-Dhawat, it was an Egyptian film, and with it started the talking cinema. At the same time, films that were brought mainly from the United States were also subtitled, and that was the beginning of subtitling in Arabic. Of course, in different parts of the Arab world, cinema started to arrive, not at the same time in all countries, of course, but Tunisia had actually Tunisia was one of the early countries that the Lumiere brothers brought their camera, and they showed some films in the cafes of Tunis, like Alexandria, almost the same year. And with the advent of talking films and talking cinema, the industry or the business of subtitling started. In some countries, they prefer to have dubbed films, not subtitled films. And the truth is, there are those who prefer to listen to the original sound of the film, be it Indian film, Moroccan film, or Italian cinema, and read the subtitles. And others would not find the exercise interesting. Actually, like the Americans, for example. Americans do not have any desire or taste or even patience to divide their attention between the original soundtrack and the two lines at the bottom of the film. They find it distracting, so they prefer the film to be dubbed. Now, there are other countries in Europe that prefer the same thing. In Germany, for example, they like it to be dubbed. Scandinavia, they like to be dubbed. Some other countries like it to be subtitled. So that is the beginning of the two different branches of a foreign film a foreign film translated for the local audience by subtitling, by way of subtitling, or by way of dubbing. Each one has its own merits. For example, you cannot expect children to follow subtitled films. So children programs are ideally dubbed for this young audience. But for others who prefer a taste of the original, they would probably go for subtitling. But then again, when you become an enthusiast of foreign film, you might like actually to watch the film, the original film, in a subtitled format. That gives you a taste, a deeper, stronger understanding of the original culture. Today, I don't really like the term audiovisual translation, because after 25 years, I decided that I prefer the word multimedia translation. And I have my own reasons for that. For the past 25 years, I have been examining this linguistic transfer of audiovisual material through the two branches of subtitling and dubbing. But then I realized that there are other things that are equally important. When I say equally important, I mean for me as a practitioner. I have been subtitling films for almost 31 years now. And I have seen a lot of changes with the technology and even the way things are done, and even the linguistic taste. And that goes for Arabic into English and English into Arabic as well. And the reason I prefer to use the word multilingual translation is because, I beg your pardon, multimedia translation, is because as a teacher, as a trainer, and also as a practitioner, there are other ways and other skills and other software programs and other media that needs to be taken into account. Multimedia means that I am dealing with text, color, sound, animation, and video at the same time. In audio-visual translation, as the word says, it is two channels only, audio and visual. And while we can play and manipulate one channel, the first channel, the audio, we cannot touch We cannot interfere with the second channel, which is the visual. In other words, in simple terms, the audio I can translate, I can delete, I can add, I can do nothing and just let it pass. But with the visual, the viewer cannot do anything, and I cannot manipulate that channel. The picture is there in front of the viewer, regardless of what the subtitler does or does not do. I was talking actually to a group of trainee subtitlers the other day, and we discussed the strategy of zero translation, which means you don't do anything. And it was surprising. How come we don't do anything? Because we heard in the dialogue there is a sentence. And the rule is, if there is no need to say it in writing, in subtitles, there is no need. But to reach that point, you really have to have developed a taste for manipulating the audio and visual channels together at the same time. You have to build this sensitivity and trust in yourself that you are able to see that the video channel and say to yourself, it is clear enough. There is no need to subtitle everything you hear. If, for example, that's a classic example. If the actors are talking about orange juice, and someone is offering the other a glass of orange juice, and the other person says, "Thank you for the orange juice," and they talk about how's the orange juice, there is no need to keep repeating the word orange juice. You can say it, referring to it with a pronoun, or you can say nice, or you say nothing, because the picture shows that they are enjoying a glass of fresh orange juice, unless, of course, it becomes critical that you have to mention that it was a glass of orange juice. The second one that he actually had, it was not strawberry juice or lemon juice, for example. Now, to reach this point, when you are able to trust yourself, to let the image speak for itself, it requires some time. To illustrate this, you really have to have watched enough films to build that sensitivity to the visual. A film, of course, it is about a story, but you must be able not just to know what happened, you should be interested and develop that that sensitivity to how the tale or the story was told, how the camera plays its role in giving the viewer the meaning. That brings me to another level, higher level, which I like to call visual metaphors. We have linguistic metaphors, audio metaphor. It's common in spoken language, but a visual metaphor is when the camera shows something, but it means something else. Now, let us take an Egyptian film, for example. Egyptian viewers, Arab viewers, are able to understand, to relate things, to understand what's the meaning of this image, even if the dialogue doesn't mention that. Are you following? Perhaps not.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Okay, it's a metaphor. Perhaps it's better if I give you an example. All right. I turned my professional experience into a PhD, into a series of research papers about the films of Omar Sharif. And my favorite film is في بيتنا رجل. I should say في بيتنا رجل. A man in our house. It's a very popular film. There is a scene in the film, and this happens in almost all Egyptian and Arab homes. There is a mural that we all like to hang on the wall that might have a verse from the Quran, from the Bible, from any book that you believe in, a poetry. It's a single phrase that sums up your outlook in life, or a verse of any source that makes you feel serene, feel comfortable. The one in mind is a verse from the Quran. It says, قُلْ لَنْ يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. In the film, if you know, the film briefly is about the resistance, Egyptian resistance against the British occupation in Egypt in the first half of the, in the early part of the 20th century. And our hero has been arrested, and the parents are worried about him. And we hear that the parents are so worried about their son, they don't know what will happen. And the camera moves from what the parents are saying to the wall, and it shows this frame, this verse, and it moves to the two sisters in an adjacent nearby room. Now, that frame with the writing is actually verbal, it's language, but I have actually the DVD, and it is commercially subtitled, and I stopped at the subtitling for quite some time. The scene is there. I mean, the camera shows the frame with the writing. It means a lot to the Arabic viewer, to me, to the viewer who actually understands the development of the plot. But the subtitler did not do anything. And I asked myself, why not? It is obviously very relevant. It is a metaphor because it's not part of the dialogue, but it means something. Why didn't the subtitler do anything about it? After many, many hours of thinking, I realized that it was not subtitled because it was not verbalized. It is not part of the dialogue. That's why the subtitler did not do it, did not subtitle that, did not translate that image. And that brings me to the point of visual metaphors. Something there that it says something, but it has not been uttered or verbalized. It does not appear in the dialogue. What would you do? Would you let it pass? Would you interfere? Would you do something else? You cannot cut it out. You cannot zoom the camera quickly. You cannot fast forward the running or the playing of the film. It's there. Now, those who read Arabic would obviously see it, but what would the subtitler do? Now, this metaphor, visual metaphor, appears in the film, and subtitlers don't do anything about it. In dubbing, what would you do if you are dubbing the film? Again, it's the same principle. It is not part of the dialogue, but it is there on the wall. Would you interfere? Would you account for this meaning or this message, if you like? This is probably something that we can talk about in more detail with more examples later on. But this example, the reason I mentioned this example is because I wanted to illustrate the meaning of visual or film literacy. To be able to subtitle or to dub films, you have to reach a level of film literacy, visual literacy, which means that you are interested in how films are made, in how the camera moves, how meaning is constructed visually. A film is not just the audio, it's not just the script or the dialogue list. It is the sum of everything: sound, music, decor, the clothes they are wearing, the kind of images that we see, for example, whose photo on the wall, what's the headline in the newspaper when the camera moves fleetingly, very quickly, and there is, for example, just anything, man lands on the moon. We know this is dating element. We know that we are in 1969. We are in July 1969 because that is when it happened, the landing on the moon. So these things I, as a subtitler, need to be aware of. All right. Subtitling is fascinating, and you could spend your lifetime in this field, but I decided not to do that. I decided to move away from audiovisual to multimodal translation, because the technology is changing. I am not keeping up. I cannot keep up with the technology, with the apps, software, the tricks of digital technology. It is overwhelming, and the upgrading and the updating and the versions and I mean, people, especially young people, I mean, children come up with all these wonderful skills, and I'm not aware of it. I am unable to keep track of all these apps and softwares and tricks, manipulating photos, audio, TikTok and Instagram and all these things. And even every platform of these digital social media platforms is adding more features every day. However, as a practitioner, I practice as a subtitler, film subtitling, and also as a trainer. I am moving now into examining audiovisual translation as multimodal, because I need to, particularly when I'm teaching an introductory course to audiovisual translation, I start with text, manipulating text, which is Word, Microsoft Word program. Really get to know how to do that, and then move into photos and images, Photoshop, and doing things with photos, and then using SoundCloud and adding sound files to pictures, animation. And I must stop here to give you an example, otherwise it becomes too complicated. I am aware of the young generation. They don't read or write. I'm not very happy about this, but that's the way things are. In the old days, when I was younger, I used to write letters and write birthday cards. Cards were part of my growing up. I purchase a card and I write a message. But before that, I used to spend, honestly, I used to spend an hour choosing the right card, because the right card had a picture or an image, and sometimes it had a sentence already written in the card. And I would view 1, 2, 15, 27 cards, especially when you are young, in love, and the person means a little bit more than just Merry Christmas message. And that was the experience. So a card has a picture, maybe flowers, or maybe a teddy bear or something, and maybe a short poem. Another card was blank. Can you see what I'm getting at? A card is blank, a card with a message in it. There are two different channels here. The blank card is blank. There's no channel. The other card has a message in it. A third card has a picture already on the front or maybe inside. Another card has a fold out. There's something that comes out, especially for children, birthday cards for children. A balloon comes out. And then sometimes there is a music chip in the card. So there's audio channel. And sometimes, I remember, I used to buy cars that were scented. It has a nice smell, flowers. This is probably for birthdays or weddings or Valentine's Day. These were sophisticated, expensive cards. Of course, now everything is done through email and WhatsApp, and very quickly and very, of course, it means a lot. Of course it does. But let us stick to the channels and the multimedia. Of course, with WhatsApp, you can send a file that has audio, visual, animation, color, and probably a very famous message. And of course, we have all seen very recently, after Ramadan, some of the messages that we exchanged. Some were very well done, sophisticated. What I'm getting at is that multimedia is about this. And particularly when I move into other media that needs translated. As a subtitler, I do not just subtitle feature films. I subtitle documentaries, which is, there is, in my opinion, or in my case at least, there is more work in this field. It is more, I think it pays well compared to films. But again, it depends on your situation, if you are getting more documentaries to translate or just one compared to 5 different feature films. But in my case, excuse me, documentaries have not received the attention they deserve. A lot of the talking, researching, publication has been focused more or less on feature films, subtitling or dubbing. Very few people research the area of documentaries, children programs as well. But even apart from all this, there is now the 5-minute introductory videos. Companies, government, new programs, new initiatives, they develop this 5-minute video as an introductory to the whole concept. And you see this in websites, social media, government websites, even in the newspapers, I mean, the online sites of the newspapers. This needs subtitling as well. But it is difficult because it is so short and you need to prepare yourself. And this is the final point before I stop. You need to prepare yourself. How do you prepare yourself for multimedia translation? In my opinion, as a translator, you have to read and read and read, and you have to keep a diary. The diary for 2 things. One, we all do that when we find an interesting expression that I learned today. And I learn every day something new. I'm never too old to learn, never too proud not to learn. But in my diary, I also write things that I take a note of something that I found a translation for, but I'm not happy with it. But I got it from the media. The media actually says, I should give you a good example. Quite often in the media, I remember this. This is actually a long time ago. Gosh, it's a long time ago. I remember Henry Kissinger when he used to, this is a former American, I'm not quite sure if he was actually a foreign minister or just
Secretary of State, I think, yes.
Yes, thank you. And the Al-Ahram newspaper in Cairo used to refer to his shuttle diplomacy, and they use the word al-rihlat al-makukiyya. Makuk. It comes from the textile industry. And I remember I had a professor who actually said, I'm not very happy with this term. It is literal translation. There must be something better. And I picked this habit from him. I would accept the media translations, but I would put it in a special section in my notebook until I find something else. Maybe I can improve on it. To give you another example that was personal, the word DVD. DVD. When it first appeared, I personally wrote it DVD, but I actually wrote it as it is in English, D, dal, ya, V, الفاء والياء ودي مرة ثانية. Later on, with the usage, it dawned on me that I can actually write it as one word, DVD, one word. Another example is greenhouse effects. When it first became popular in Arabic media, it was translated as تأثير الصوبات الزجاجية. It was a bit rough, but later on it was changed and it became more understood in Arabic, and ظاهرة الاحتباس الحراري, it was developed. And that you can see, when the concept is understood, you can find the word for it. And I remember actually a colleague of mine, and she visited us here in Australia, Danica Silishkovich. She was a good professor of conference interpreting, and she came to Sydney and she gave a talk, and she said, interpreters, you just have to focus on, you have to trust yourselves. You have to trust that you are already good translators and good interpreters. Just pay attention to the meaning and the words will come naturally. And this is what I would like to finish with. You trust yourselves to understand the message, the visual and the audio message, and the meaning will come naturally.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gamal.
Right.
It is a very good note to end this talk. It is very positive and trust, a message of encouraging self-confidence and trust. Exactly. But before that, I think I should make a confession here, is that with every message I receive from my friends accepting my invitation, I already feel like I received a gift or a birthday card. And this is one of the best birthday cards or gifts I'm receiving. Thank you very much for an enlightening and entertaining presentation on multimedia translation. You've taken us through the history of this practice. You've given us very concrete examples on challenges facing the subtitler or the translator in this area, multimedia translation. But before I open it up for discussion, I would like to ask a question. From my own experience, I have done little subtitling and dubbing, but I am faced with some challenges related basically to some culture-bound expressions or terms. When you are facing this and the original text or source is in the standard language of that community, you can do some research and find out what is meant by that metaphor or that cultural reference and so on. But when it is uttered at the level of dialect, then it is very hard to access information. And information about that is not available on the internet or on books and so on. I remember, and I will give you an example from Egypt. I was subtitling a sort of a documentary about the events which took place in Egypt in the so-called Arab Spring. And there was it was a training course for photographers and other professionals in audio doing films. And the film at that time was about sexual harassment in Egypt and how the problem has become very serious with the so-called revolution in January 2011, especially in the squares, Tahrir Square in particular. And the film is portraying a protagonist telling her story. And she was describing a scene at the underground, I think it's a metro or a tube, stating that she was subjected to sexual harassment and, I quote, in Egyptian, وَضَرَبْتُ بِالْأَلَمِ. ضَرَبْتُ بِالْأَلَمِ, for me, though I know I'm familiar with Egyptian dialect, but really I missed it. And it was, luckily, I was with the author at that time, and I asked her, what do you mean by ضَرَبْتُ بِالْأَلَمِ? Slap in the face. But I didn't get it. I really went straight to a pen.
Yeah.
So ضربت بالقلم, because she was going back from school. Perhaps she had a pen at that time. So, but sometimes access to the authors is not possible. So what to do in this case? Where you get your knowledge, from where you get your knowledge, and what sources. In this case, especially, these are culture-bound words and references to particular culture in the dialect.
It's a very good question because it actually touches on professional practice at all levels. Subtitling, written translation, even interpreting, and you should know, if you are in the booth and a conference interpreting and there is not enough, there's no chance for you to check something. So you have to rely on your memory, your experience, your confidence, and your partner, the other interpreter or interpreters sitting next to you. And I actually was working in Sydney with a colleague of mine, and we agreed that, it was the first time we met, and we agreed on a methodology to help each other. I need help. I'm the first one to say I need help all the time. But in the booth, I know this is just another example from conference interpreting. If I'm saying something that's not accurate or wrong, he would just write the correct thing with a circle, put it in front of me, and I will pay attention to it, and I will understand, I will use it, and I will correct myself. Now, of course, in the booth, I did not choose my colleague. The translation company, the interpreting company, chose us together, and they told us to work together. So the first half an hour, 5 minutes, if possible, or half an hour, we get to know each other and to introduce each other and to agree on a methodology to support each other while we are working. Subtitling is obviously the opposite of conference interpreting, because you have a week at least, not always, but at least you have some time to work on the translation. I have been fortunate because here in Australia, it's multilingual, multicultural society, and I have been fortunate in teaching Arabic translation to a class of students who come, I don't think this happens anywhere in the world. I had Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians, Sudanese, Yemenis, Palestinians, Egyptians, Lebanese, Syrians, Iraqis. And I had Egyptians who were born in Kuwait, grew up in Emirates, grew up in Algeria, actually. And I had people who spoke Berber, Assyrian, Armenian, Russian, French, German, other languages as well. And that experience was fantastic. To cut a long story short, I am fortunate to have a partner who works with me, we have been working together for almost 30 years. Now, the lesson from that is that it's just an idea. I don't know, take it or leave it. When you start your career, you perhaps in the digital age that you need to start as a group, or as at least as a small group of 3, minimum of 3. The more the merrier. It is a professional group that you can bounce off each other and you help each other. I wish you the best and good health and long life and long practicing life. Even if you reach 100, you will learn something new. And you will need somebody to confirm that what you learned is actually correct. Because language changes. Language, even poetry. We read poetry when we were young. We read poetry and I thought I understood it correctly, but now I read it again or I listen to it on YouTube and I realize that was not the only meaning that I learned or I understood. That was a long answer, wasn't it? Okay, let me get to the question. I apologize for that, for the long answer.
No problem at all.
This problem of subtitling a cultural-based element, there is no solution for it. You will run into it. If you think that you know أنا ضربت بالقلم معناها إيه, next time you will find something else. It will be worse. The reason is, even in your own language, even if Tunisian from the south, from the north, even from Tunis itself, you will find things that you never heard it before. And I remember one of my students said to me, I never heard it before. And I said, it's not an excuse, because it is in the language, in the dialect. Now, here's my 2 cents worth of answer to your observation. Watch the movie twice, if you can. Make notes. Ask an Egyptian native, if you like. It's easier, actually, if you are subtitling from an Egyptian. I'm not saying that, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody understands Egyptian, but the fact is, it is common. Now, I deal with Algerian and North African dialects sometimes in court, for example, in Sydney, and okay. This is actually a big problem, regional dialects. And listening to a Tunisian here in Sydney speaking in Arabic, I'm not familiar with Tunisian dialect, but sometimes I have to make sure that there's no room for mistake or for error. So we resort to modern standard Arabic, and it's obviously a perfect solution. But in the middle of interpreting or the middle of subtitling, you will run into expressions that you are not sure of, or even that you have erroneously translated. Now, this is not because it is culturally specific. It is because you thought it meant that way. Now, this happens even if you are translating a birth certificate. Now, this will take us to another area, which is error analysis, and what kind of analysis what kind of errors we make and the analysis we conduct. And I've done some work on this. Error analysis of year 1 translation students, error analysis of year 2, 3, and 4. Now, of course, as your experience grows, you continue to make mistakes, but you make mistakes on a certain level, a different level. You start with vocabulary errors, and then syntactic errors, then idiomatic errors, then culture errors. And this is the beauty of experience. As you get older, you actually become more experienced, and you know where you have to go and ask for help, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for the insights of an experienced subtitler and translator, and definitely I totally agree with you. These are very recurrent features of any discourse, culture specific. I remember I was interpreting in Paris last year for some Sudanese, and one of the interpreters with me, she was not familiar with the Sudanese dialect, and the speakers were using the word azul, 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 and she had no clue about what this word meant. And she was just moving around and translating it one way or another. But then later she asked, what does it mean Azul? And who is Azul? It's simply the guy. So yes, these are sometimes challenging, but as you said, it's a collaborative work. You need to have recourse to native speakers of that dialect or language to get the information. Thank you very much, and I'm glad now to host a discussion and answer session, and I can see 4 hands shown. I will start. Dr. Gamal, I don't know whether you can take 3 or 4 questions at the same time, or you should answer after each question.
Well, perhaps if we listen to all 5, and then I will arrange the answers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, let's have Muhammad Salah Isa, and then Mirvet Sabr, and then Dua Mabruk. Muhammad Salah, please.
Greetings, Professor Hammouda, and greetings, Professor Muhammed Gamal. I'm Muhammad Salhi Salarus. The name is long and my questions are longer, so I would like to ask the following. First, you mentioned that sometimes we can omit a part of a dialogue if it is rendered through the visual image, but can't we argue that this may interfere with the scenario itself and the creativity of the producer and natural flow of the scenes? And second, you mentioned the fact that subtitler should possess a minimum of film's literacy, but I would like to argue that the cultural aspect and the knowledge and how well cultivated is the subtitler or translator plays an important role too. For instance, I was watching this Japanese series and the protagonist went to a shrine to pray. And the interesting part is that the site of the shrine, or actually the historical background of how the shrine was established, is somehow irrelevant to the plot. And thus, the subtitler had to add a footnote in which he explained the myth of how the shrine was founded. And third, we know that some countries have restrictions on content that may seem defiant to the norms and, in a sense, obscene. So, does censoring plays a part in hardening or easing the task of the subtitler or translator? And finally, as a subtitler, do we take into consideration how knowledgeable the target audience is in the source language? For instance, omitting some lines in a Japanese anime can easily be detected by the viewer, since this particular target audience has somehow developed a keen ear and could identify or grasp a shallow meaning of what is pronounced and said. And thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you for this lengthy question from a person with a lengthy or a long name. And by the way, his name, he's a student of mine, and his name is long for a reason. Perhaps his parents wanted to accommodate all of the saints and prophets, Muhammad, Salah, Isa, and Larus. And Larus is a saint also here in Tunis, Ben Arus. Thank you. Mirvet Sabr.
Okay.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم
مساء الخير.
مساء النور.
First, I have to thank you, Hammouda, and thank you, Dr. Muhammad. And I apologize for joining you late, though the more I listen, the more points I just scribble down. Thank you so much. My name is Mirvet Sabr. I have several hats in interpretation. My hat now is the TV interpreter and the Egyptian state-run TV interpreter for almost 20 years. Before the أهلا بحضرتك. أنا هعمل سيرش على حضرتك إن شاء الله وراح أعرف عنك أكتر. أنا طلبت من دكتور حمودة وهو مشكور سمح لي إنه أدخل معكم. بشكر حضرتك أولا. ثانيا بعتذر عن التأخير. بالنسبة لفعلا السبتايتلينج أو الترجمة شيء صعب مش سهل للأبد أبدا أبدا والمستوى بينحدر لأنه اللي بيتولى الأمر بعض الناس ما بيحسوش بالمسؤولية للأسف الشديد. فلازم طلبة عندك دكتور حمودة يفهموا قد إيه دي مسؤولية مش هي عملية سهلة. أنا دخلت في المجال قبل ما ألتحق بالتلفزيون المصري وأنا بدأت من قبل العصر الرقمي. كنا نقعد نعمل ريهرسل في غرفة مخيفة مرعبة لأن نعمل سبتايتلينج. حضرتك بتعرف قبل الديجيتال تايم قد إيه كان الوقت صعب. وشعرت لمرة ثانية إنه مجال صعب عليا. يعني أنا قدراتي محدودة. قررت إنه ما راح أستطيع أشتغل وتركته حتى قبل العصر الرقمي. the voice over أو dubbing إحنا بنسميه dubbing بيكون فيه إلى حد ما تمثيل. نحن كمترجم almost أحيانا يكون عندنا قدرات صوتية نستخدم نسميها voice over.
Right.
نحن we write down the script and then we start like acting and dubbing and this is voice over and this is one of the things I really do in the TV and I loved it for years and the voice over is very very important. But I also learned dubbing because I love cartoons and I do dubbing with my nephews and nieces which is really nice. الشغل قد ايه صعب وانا قررت انه راح اسيبه لانه ما هواش التخصص اللي انا اقدر عليه حقيقي. يعني حقيقي تحياتي لكل مترجم ما هرب من السبتايتلينج وكان شجاع. يعني ما حصلش انه هرب مثلي. وبعتذر دكتور حمودة لكن انا حقيقي بعلق علشان انا معجبة بكلام دكتور محمد ومشكورة وشاكرة ليك واحب انه الطلبة بتوعك يعني مش عارفة اشكره يعني اوصفهم بكلام كتر ادبهم واخلاقهم. احب انه انقل لهم الخبرة دي عذرا. القراءة we will never stop reading whatever it is whatever it takes guys you will never stop learning. إذا بتفتكروا إنه تعدي عليك فترة وتقول أنا أصبحت الأستاذ المترجم اترك المهنة وامشي. اترك المهنة توقف راح تكسب دخل أحسن من مجال تاني. هذا مش المجال اللي تتربح منه. هذه ليست مهنة للتربح عفوا. إذا بتشعر إنه الأمر سهل حتى لو ترجمت خطاب سهل امشي من المهنة أرجوك ما تدخل عندنا يعني. فالبحث المستمر والقراءة اللي حمودة أثار عندي النقطة لما طبعا اتكلم عن المصريين واديته بالقلم أو ضربته بالقلم. كويس إن هي قالت ضربته بالقلم. أنت شعرت إن هي she had her pencil or pen and she really hit him but in fact كانت ممكن تقول اديته بالقلم. اديته يعني تفضل تلف حوالين نفسك كمترجم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. يعني عمل إيه؟ اديته يعني إيه؟ إحنا في مصر نقول آدي النور. تفهموا إيه معنى كلمة آدي النور؟
أيوه
يعني إيه؟
آدي النور بمعنى إنه هذا هو الحق or this is the right no
إطلاقا دكتور محمد تعرفها طبعا.
Is it to light on?
Just switch on the light. Simply switch on the light. Can you imagine guys how difficult?
Yes.
إيد النور أحيانا ندي as an order إيد النور. Is it إيد النور or رجل النور or رأس النور? Guys.
Yes.
Come on, Egyptians.
Or another expression بشبش الطوب اللي تحت نافوخه.
أي.
By the way, I have been told the story or the narrative, the history and the etymology of this expression. And I think it dates back to old ancient Egypt. كان صديقي اللي أنا دعوته هو مصري مقيم في مدريد، هو اللي حكى لي القصة دي. يعني تعود إلى الفراعنة والتحنيط وبشبش الطوبة لتحت نفوخه بعد موته.
تخيل مغسل وضامن جنة. لأن أول مرة في حياتي كنت في كابينة، كان رابع مؤتمر بالنسبة لي، وإحنا نحسب بالساعات، كتعرفوا مترجم فوري كنا نحسب بالساعة زي الطيارين. بعدين يطلع لي واحد يقول لي أنا مش مغسل وضامن جنة. استغفر الله العظيم. أيوة، يعني المقصود أنا حقيقي كمان كنت برا مصر، وده وجد صعوبة إنه أنا أتفاعل كمان مع الأسلوب المصري، ناهيكم عن إني مصرية وكمان مش فاهمة هو يقصد إيه. فمسكين يجي مترجم تونسي جزائري مغربي ويقول، ويطلع مصري يتكلم ويقول لك واديته بالقلم على وشه. يعني مين القلم؟ مين اديته؟ مين وشه؟ مين دول؟ كيفكم؟ فده هيكون بالاستماع وبالقراءة والبحث المستمر القاتل. وعندكم الانترنت، انتم جيل محظوظ، عندكم الانترنت تكتب الكلمة وتحط رجل على رجل وتعمل احسن مترجم في الدنيا. انا حصل ترجم للمغاربة، يا الله يا الله على الصعوبة، يعني في جامعة الدول العربية، ويتكلم بخلفية قانونية لأنه كان قاضي ومغربي. تتخيلوا قد إيه الصعوبة. وبعدين يتكلم باللغة العربية الفصحى كبداية، وأوكي كله كويس، وفجأة ينفعل. هو أول ما ينفعل بالقضية أيا كانت القضية، نحن والله المترجمين، مترجمة تبدأ تترجم وتعتذر للمتحدثين، ومترجمة تروح له لأنه محترم ومبجل وتحب على إيده وتقول له ارجع للغة العربية الفصحى. نحن في الكابينة بنموت، بالمقصورة العربية بنموت، اللي هي بنترجم للغة الإنجليزية للأجانب. بنعتذر بنعتذر بنعتذر. فقد إيه يا شباب، لن تتوقفوا عن البحث، لن تتوقفوا عن العمل، وأبدا تفتكروا أنه خلصتوا سنوات دراسة يعني الحمد لله. لا. ودكتور محمد، أنا سعيدة جدا وراح أعمل البحث الكافي عن حضرتك، وسعيدة بمعرفتك. حمودة أشكرك وأسف على الإطالة.
ميرفت، شكرا جزيلا أولا على الطلة البهية والزيارة اللطيفة الرشيقة.
تكرم.
وفي نهاية المطاف هذه هي الغاية، المغزى من وراء هذه اللقاءات وهذا الحديث هو الإثراء والنصائح، خاصة اللي خرجت بها نصائح ثمينة جدا للطلبة ولينا حتى احنا، لأنه التعلم هو مسار كامل لا يتوقف. لن تستطيع أن تكون معلما إذا ما لم تكن متعلما. فالتعلم، نحن المترجم وكل من يشتغل في الترجمة سواء كانت تحريرية أو فورية ينهل من نهر جار غير آسن، بمعنى أن هو يواكب التطورات، يواكب تطور المعنى، يواكب تطور اللغة، مثل ما أشار الدكتور محمد. وأنا أقولها وأتحمل مسؤوليتي في كلامي. أرى، وعندي أيضا قبعة الجامعة وأدرس في الجامعة، وأرى إن الأساتذة المترجمين والتراجمة هم أفضل أداء من الأساتذة غير المترجمين والتراجمة، لأنهم يقدمون للطلبة معلومات حديثة يعني وأمثلة عملية. يعني قادر المترجم أن يأتي بمثال عملي وحقيقي في التحديات وكيف تجاوزها. أما الأستاذ غير المترجم فهو، احنا في تونس نقول يترجم أشياء بايتة، يعني old fashioned، أكل بالية، أكل عليها الزمن وشرب، ويعيدها ويكررها فقط، فيكرر نفسه ويصيب نفسه لأن نفسه أصابها الملل والضجر، وطلبت بطبيعة الحال سيتلقون عدوى الملل والضجر. شكرا جزيلا على المداخلة اللطيفة الرشيقة من جديد. وحاجة أخرى ميرفت، أنا أوفر لك فرصة اكتشاف أناس خبراء وأساتذة عمالقة، فلازم تدفع لي بالمصري.
طبعا والله.
أعرف لماذا ستجري البحث.
طبعا
على الأقل
طبعا.
يعني مقابل مكافئ ليومي عمل ترجمة فورية.
هذا أكثر من استضافتك عندي في الانتربريت شات.
إن شاء
تحتاج
الله.
أكثر.
لا أبدا.
شرف ليا، شرف
شكرا.
ليا يا
الله
دكتور.
يخليكي. شكرا. ضحى مبروك please.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, and evening. So my question is, do you think that is it possible for novice subtitlers to challenge already existing translations of things that the Arab world considers outside culture or considers something that is not ours? Or I'm talking here, for example, slurs or LGBTQ related issues. So for sometimes they put just one word for something that actually deserves a whole sentence. And also, have you already subtitled for Lars van Dier, Ken Loach, Tarkovsky? And did you have to watch all the movies in order to get all the symbolism, the imagery of the movies? Because they are sometimes linked between all movies. For example, Tarkovsky always talks about Russian era and the Soviet War era, and he doesn't actually. I don't think there's a continuity between all movies. So, as a subtitler, in order to be accurate and concise, did you have to watch all the movies and then start the subtitling or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Duha. Please, Dr. Muhammad, if would you like to take these questions as a first round, and then we are going to take a second round?
Yes, please. Thank you.
It's over to you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Muhammad. The questions were a very fast series of very good questions. Duha's question is also related to the first. If I remember correctly, there were 4 questions that Muhammad asked. Okay. First of all, both Duha and Muhammad, what is the purpose of subtitling? We must agree on the purpose. Let us say a language into Arabic. Let us say just any language, doesn't matter, Russian. From Russian into Arabic. Now, the viewers, we don't know who the viewers are unless a company contracts me to subtitle this film for their own employees. Now, the employees could be students of Russian literature. They could be army officers who are flying to Russia next month for training. They could be pilots, could be housewives, could be young ladies, could be teenagers. If that is the case, which never happens, by the way, I would be careful and I would do what Duha suggested, that I have to really read and do my homework and watch as many Russian movies as I can. Can you imagine if for example, the Egyptian Society of Film Critics asked me to subtitle this Russian Pushkin, for example, film based on one of Pushkin's novels, and I have to subtitle it for the film critics. Would you accept this job? I would not accept it unless I'm ready, good and ready for it, because I know they are critics. And sometimes you have to look farther afield. Don't rush to accept anything. Money is probably a good reason why we accept jobs, but be clever, especially when you are starting as a subtitler. More about that hopefully later. But as a rule of thumb, we don't know who the viewers are, and we subtitle for the general public. Now, the general public do not understand Russian, otherwise they would not be watching the subtitled film. That's number 1. Number 2, a film is a visual experience. It is not written translation. Yes, a lot of people will be looking at the film, and the first thing they do is the subtitler is not good because he or she omitted this and this and this, and they didn't say that slur or that insult, that's not the real meaning in the original. And the real meaning in Arabic is this and this, but the subtitler did not have the courage to say it. Yeah. I have been hearing this for the last 100 years, and it will continue, because culturally speaking, we do not allow such words to be heard or written on public television. You could argue and say that we are not developed. Well, only Americans are developed. Italians are not developed. The French are not developed. The Egyptians are not developed. The Indians are not, the Japanese are not developed. Only the Americans have lost. They don't blush. They don't shy from saying the F word. Every sentence has the F word in it. Is this civilization? Well, I'm not getting into that. I will not try even to answer that. That is their taste. That is their cultural taste. They believe they are whatever. They like it that way. We like their films. We like American films because of the cinematography. The filmmaking is advanced. We don't like their language, their dialogues. We don't like the F word being in every sentence. Now, don't we use the F word in Arabic? Of course we do. But we use it when we have to. We use it when it serves the purpose, but not the American way. Now, we don't have to accept the American way. Actually, we should not accept the American way simply because it's American. Now, Muhammad mentioned about the Japanese anime. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, and the subtitler is Mrs. Toda Natsuko in Japan. She has been subtitling for almost 60 years, and obviously she's a lot older, technically speaking and culturally speaking, compared to the anime. The anime has its own population, has its own fandom, its own generation after generation have grown up watching the anime, and they know everything. They almost have a PhD in the characters, the lines, the plots, the stories, the history, the volumes, and everything. When Toda Natsuko subtitled one film, she subtitled the film. She has 60 years experience, mind you. And she thought that it's not necessary to do it that way. She was criticized. Actually, what's a stronger word than criticized? She was badly criticized. She was attacked, actually. And they called her names, and it's time to retire, and you don't know anything about anime, and you ruined the experience. You ruined the pleasure for us. That was too much. What is the purpose of subtitling? Sorry, correction. Let me go back one step. Who criticized the Japanese subtitler? The Japanese themselves, who already know the Japanese source language and they know English. It was not fair for these young people to criticize the subtitler. I'm not sticking to my colleague. I'm not defending her, but I'm just saying, if you speak English and Japanese, what is your problem? She is subtitling this to Egyptians, Arabic speakers, Africans, Indians who don't speak Japanese. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot have everything. And what is the purpose of subtitling? To give you the opportunity to understand and enjoy a foreign film. It is not, subtitled films is not an exercise in learning languages. You are comparing source A with source B. Now, the second question Muhammad asked about...
Sir, if I may interrupt, you were talking about the fandom, but the thing is, fandoms are growing all over the world. You can find an anime fandom in Tunisia, you can find an anime fandom in Egypt, and these people have watched over 500 series, and they can't actually speak Japanese, but it became somehow like passive language. They can detect when a sentence is missing. They can know, let's say, 3, 4 words in the sentence and understand it and grasp the fact that the subtitler omitted that sentence, which is
okay. Thank you. If that is the case, why don't you just get the Japanese source DVD and enjoy it? You are overlooking the fact that, with all due respect, that you are a fan of Japanese and you've watched 100,000 films and you can sense the thing. Subtitling is not written translation. I cannot possibly put everything on the screen. I'm only allowed 2 lines and 6 seconds maximum. If you want me to put everything, I will have to use a 3rd, 4th, and 5th line. Can you imagine that much on every, sorry, during the whole film? This is not film viewing. This is written translation. In subtitling, there are techniques and there are, yes, there is sacrifice. You will have to tolerate loss of input. There will be loss of something in subtitling, because aesthetically, I mean, the beauty of a film is a visual experience before it's an audio experience. And this is what I meant by film literacy, that you have to understand and to appreciate that people go to the movies to enjoy watching the movie, not listening to the movie. Now, of course, there's a dialogue, and dialogue is an essential part of the viewing experience, but the cinema, the word cinema means viewing, and the visual actually takes a lot more than the audio. Indeed, again, if I take you to that Fi Baytina Ragul, the movie, there is a scene, 2 scenes actually, when there is no dialogue. And Henry Barakat, the director, he actually summed up so much meaning without a word uttered. Twice in the movie, the camera just looked at the faces, and the cadre was there for about 10 seconds. You could actually, okay, I'm excited about this because it is actually so eloquent. The silence is deafening. The silence is so pregnant with meaning. I coined the term once before about old films, old cinema. It's actually black and white. And I said, in black and white cinema, there is a lot more color than in today's films. What I meant by that was not physical. I didn't mean color. I meant meaning. Cinema is about viewing the images before listening to the dialogue. And that's the difference between radio and cinema. I respect what you said about the fans and their specialization and the depth of their knowledge and appreciation, but subtitling is not written translation. You have to sacrifice something to enjoy the film. Now, have I answered all your questions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, you did.
You
Thank you.
did. Thank you very much. Now
Okay.
let's take
Was
another
one
round. Yes,
Sorry.
go ahead. Please go ahead. Yes.
One last thing about do I have film literacy? Film literacy means, yes, you have to watch some films, the classics. I'd love to get a list of the top 10 or the top 100 films, Tunisian films, for example. There is a list. There's actually a book, I have it here, about the best 100 films in Egyptian cinema. 6 of them were made by Henry Barakat, and Omar Sharif appears in all of them, in the 6. And when I was doing my PhD, it was based on Omar Sharif filmography. And I believe I learned a lot from building my own understanding of how films are made and how the camera moves. Because when I get stuck, you see, I have only maximum of 2 lines and maximum of 6 seconds. There is no space for footnotes. There is no, I wish there is. I wish in Japanese television, I go to Japan a lot, and I spend time watching Japanese TV programs. The Japanese TV program is full of writing. Earthquake warnings, the news, the time, the weather, and local news and things. So it is very visual, and sometimes there is graphics as well, like surprise with this star thing. And they put a lot of same language subtitling, and it is in different colors. My wife is Japanese, so we go to Japan a lot. And I asked her, why do you do this? Why do you have this? Is this for deaf population? She said, no, it is actually for the elderly and the aged, because there's a large percentage of all people in Japan. So they write everything because they are hard of hearing. They are not deaf, but they are hard of hearing. And quite often in hospitals, at the airport, at home, the people have the TV on, but the volume is very low. So the same language subtitling helps people follow what's happening. And it's very graphic, it's very interesting. And that helped me a little bit to understand the repertoire of skills, techniques, methods that I have to employ in becoming a good subtitler. But I assure you, subtitling is not written translation. And sometimes you will cop the criticism because you are not a good subtitler. And because of as I mentioned already about the obscene words that we see in American films, and Anis Abeid, for example, was an institution by himself for 40 years, and now his children continue the same tradition. The words, the American F word is translated by a list of words that now we laugh at. And we grew up making fun of these archaic, ancient words. Okay, you are criticizing Anis Abeid? I'll put the ball in your court. The F word, how would you translate it? And how would you want it to be heard and written on public television in front of our children, our young people, and our families? You answer me.
Very good question, very relevant question. I totally agree, subtitling is not written translation, but also written translation is not subtitling. It is the other way around is also true. We have to adopt a technique of linguistic relativity, in a sense that we need to have recourse to euphemisms of the swear words for the very relevant question that you have asked. I remember I was teaching several years ago in another university, Institut University, and we gave a text for our students at the time. They were second year university, and it was translation from Arabic into English. And I'm sorry, there is a time lag between my image and my voice. I'm really sorry for that. So some of the techniques used by Arab subtitlers like Anis Abeid and so on is to use those archaic words, as you mentioned, like the F word translated as tabban and so on. Now, as I said, written translation is not subtitling. So they thought that there is a very a fixed equivalence relationship between the F word and tabban. And there was an expression in the Arabic text, quote, tabban لهذه الدنيا البائسة. I was describing a protagonist sharing his thoughts and emotions about life. And almost 65 or 70% of the students rendered that expression tabban into that F word.
Yes.
So this is really a relevant question. And the questions you asked also are relevant even by today's standards. Thank you very much for the answers, Dr. Gamal. And we take another round of questions, and we start with Wisal, and then Taqwa, and then Ayman, Shayma, and Jenny, Khadija. Wisal, please.
Greetings, everyone. It's such an honor having the chance to interact with you, Mr. Muhammad. Thanks to Dr. Hammouda. I was watching a Korean documentary the other day, and I noticed that there is some sort of explanation following the subtitling. And I don't know why the subtitler felt the need probably to make to explain some sort of rituals or namings and the reason behind them. And so is everyone qualified to do that? And do we subtitlers have absolute freedom to really claim the freedom to add whatever we want to the text, whether it's explanation or personal point of view, for instance? And so what's your say on that? And I have a comment regarding your American effort, concept. And so here, it's funny, my little cousin, the other day was wandering around the house and shouting the word F, It was so funny. I was coming here, like, what do you mean by the word? You even know what it means? And he was like, yeah, it means tabban and so on. Don't you think here it's because of these of settlers that they gave this misconception about the word? They made it seem so simple, and they didn't give it because it's not appropriate to use in public spaces. And so don't subtitlers have to request, for instance, to omit these words from the videos or movies or whatever? Or if they cannot request such things, can they request to at least put between parentheses that this is inappropriate or هذه عبارة غير لائقة, instead of making it seem it's a normal word to use? Because kids here, they don't understand what it really means, and so they're using it without knowing what it actually means. And so it causes problems, and that's probably why the word is so commonly used here in our community, especially in our Arabic community. What do you think about that? And thank you.
Thank you, Wisal. Taqwa?
Good morning and greetings. It's an honor to have you here, Dr. Muhammed Gamal. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. So, technology a couple of times. It helps to promote the image of the country, of that translated material, and thus engage it with the outside world. Nonetheless, audiovisual translation may still face challenges such as the examination of subtitling by appropriate subtitling authorities, like Wisal said, the inappropriate words, or sometimes we have those totally wrong equivalents or subtitling for what is accurate, and still we have them today, like on Netflix and others. And also the lack of briefing of academic subtitling. So can you tell us more about this and the reasons behind this? And my second question is actually an advice. Can you give us an advice for the newly graduated, fresh academic student of translation and subtitling? How can they enter this field of subtitling? Thank you.
Thank you, Taqwa. Ayman Tarhuni.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you guys hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, good. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Hammouda for accepting to actually give me this opportunity to talk to one of the scholars and authors that I have been reading for the last couple of years. I'm doing my PhD on audiovisual translation, and so I've got a few questions about this. earlier you talked about visual metaphor, and you said that the Quranic verse was not translated. Don't you think that was a mistake on the behalf of the translator, not to translate something that is actually crucial to the understanding of the plot of the episode or the film, especially that so that's the one first question. And the second question, isn't Arabic subtitling norms capable of evolving, especially that, as you can see with Japanese TV, they usually use the footnotes actually on the top of the screen or at the sides. They can actually translate and explain things that usually are only written, or if the concept is not actually explainable, or it's a foreign concept that other viewers cannot understand. So that's another question. My third question, and the last one, would you recommend any readings, any articles or books about censorship of taboo language in AVT in the Arab world, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ayman. Yes, we take Shaima, the last one in this round. Yes, Shaima, please.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
good morning.
Thank
Hello.
you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening.
First question is in Dostoevsky's movies, as Duha mentioned earlier, there is a lot of poetry and symbolism. I remember there wasn't even words sometimes. For instance, in his movie Nostalgia, there was a huge frame on the wall saying 1 + 1 = 1. It was all in numbers, there wasn't any word, and it wasn't translated or interpreted at all. And if you want to translate it or subtitle it, how could we do? My second question is in dubbing. Can we say that the frame, can we say it, pronounce it as an inner voice, as if it's a monologue the character is saying or talking to himself? And in subtitling, could it be a quote between brackets, or should we just subtitle it or leave it like it is? And my third question is for Mr. Hammouda. It's just out of curiosity, what the word azul means at the end.
I will answer it straight. It is the guy. When you are exposed to dialects from different Arab countries, you have to know that this is the very first. Izolda means the guy, this guy, like Zalame in Lebanese, Ilwadda bil-Masri, Lulaid bil-Tunsi, and there is a really very interesting subject how to call people, like a waiter in a cafe. In Tunisia, sometimes we say mudir, معلم, etc. And Egyptians, they have very good system of calling people باش مهندس يا معلم يا etc. But when they are engineers, so if you are not into that culture, then you will probably commit some mistakes. So Izul means the guy, very simply. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Gamal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I think we have to agree on two things, properly, that will put your minds at ease from the beginning and for a long time to go. We agreed already, subtitling is not written translation. Number two, in every form of translation, linguistic transfer, which could be translation, interpreting, conference interpreting, voice over, dubbing, subtitling, explaining, paraphrasing, there are mistakes. Yet, the only translator who gets criticized is the subtitler more than others. Why? Because of exposure. I translate a book, only 5,000 people read the book. I subtitle a film, and millions of people watch the film. So my little mistake in the entire film, it's a mistake, and I take full responsibility for it, but it is just one mistake. It is broadcast not only in Egypt, but my cousins in Canada can know about it. My friends in Australia can know about it. My relatives in Japan can know about it because it is broadcast. Is this fair? Of course it's not. I mean, you cannot really argue and say it's fair, because I made earlier another mistake in the translation of the novel. And last week I made also another mistake in my conference interpreting. So why is it that when I make one mistake in subtitling a film, I get criticized for it? Now, I'm not defending the fact that I made errors, but making errors is part of professional life, particularly in translation and in interpreting. And that's why error analysis is a huge area that we academics, teachers, trainers pay attention to, and all of us as practitioners, we have to pay attention to. Another thing that will help put your minds at ease: those who watch subtitled films, 99% do not have recourse to the original. 110% of those who criticize the subtitling mistakes are the bilingual, who are actually good at understanding both languages. Yet it is fun for them to criticize. It is their pastime. It is ala aini wa rasi. It's okay. I accept that. They have nothing else to do. That's fine. I'm happy with that. But I'm just pointing out that what is the purpose? What are we doing here? We are subtitling films. We are not translating films. A film is a visual experience in the first place. Subtitling, you cannot say everything, even if you wanted to. The footnotes are not allowed. Explanations are not allowed. I don't want to use that percentage, but you ask yourself, how many movies have you watched where you think an explanation is really crucial to watching the film? I will answer that for you, and take it or leave it. 1%. I have a room full of DVDs. I have like a cinema upstairs. And I watch films because I love cinema. I have watched Fi Baitina Ragul 46 times before I finished my PhD. That's for you, Ayman. You don't have to do it this way. Maybe you are smarter than me. But I enjoy every time. I enjoy the 46 times of watching Henry Barakat's classic, Fi Baitina Ragul. I also enjoy watching Omar Sharif, particularly in his black and white period. The 22 Egyptian films that he made before he was discovered by Hollywood. One more thing to help you put your minds at ease. I would love the opportunity to read about Tchaikovsky, or to watch a couple of films about based on his novels, before I tackle one of his films. And I would like to know who the audience are. No one will tell me. And I have been doing this for now 31 years. No one has ever told me, Muhammad, Dr. Gamal, you are the best of the best in the world in subtitling, and we would like you to subtitle this for this particular audience. It never happened. So we must accept this. We must accept that we do not live in an orderly, certainly we don't these days. We don't live in a world where everything is compartmentalized. Everything is perfect. Far from it. A film is subtitled. I mean, a film is, I'm jumping the gun here. A film is subtitled for the general public. A film is for enjoyment. A film is for the general public. A film is not a documentary. A film, a narrative, a feature film is not a documentary by the BBC. It is not a scientific documentary for general education. We are not talking about chemistry or the environment or the coronavirus or no, it's a feature film. Let me ask you another question. When a film is subtitled, what is the purpose? We must ask this question. What is the purpose of subtitling a film? I'm interested to know what this film is about, or I'm interested to watch a movie by or featuring my favorite Indian actor or actress. When you reach that level, oh, this is Henry Barakat, or this is Abu Saif, Salah Abu Saif, or this is Arafah, Sharif Arafah, or I feel like today I would like to watch a comedy. I'm too tired. I've been working all day and I want to come home and relax. Maybe Fatina Abdul Wahab. I reach this point or level where I choose a film by a certain director. It is not the actor that makes me relax, it's the director. Now, you could say that I have gone too far. I become obsessed with cinema. Maybe I am, but this reflects my familiarity, affinity, my film literacy, my depth of interest and enthusiasm. Once you reach that, and you don't have to reach that level, but I'm just making a point here that it's different degrees of films. My wife doesn't like watching the same movie twice. I do. أنا بشجع الزمالك والزمالك كثير الهزائم زي ما انتم عارفين، لكن أنا أحب أشاهد المباراة أكثر من مرة علشان أعرف ليه الزمالك اتغلب في هذه المباراة. لو الزمالك فاز 10-0 ألف مبروك، بس برضو عاوز أعرف ليه فاز، مش مجرد النتيجة كام. Now, is this obsession? Maybe. But this is how I deal with audiovisual material, the making. That's why I'm moving from audiovisual to multimedia. I would like to know how text is manipulated, how images are manipulated, how sound is manipulated and added to the file and the visual. Now, I forgot, sorry, I'm not quite sure who asked me about the visual in the movie. This mural on the wall that was not translated. Is this an error? Well, between you and me, because now we are specialists in this, and we agree now that we have a high level of film literacy. I agree it is an error on the part of the of the subtitler. But to the normal people, was that an error? No, it wasn't. For the simple reason, the subtitler will say to you, it was not in the dialogue list. They gave me the dialogue list. I watched the film. It does not appear in the film. Therefore, I did not translate it. I didn't do anything wrong. And he's right. Again. Yet between you and me, it was not a big thing. But, sorry, we agree that the subtitler did not make a big mistake. Because if we look at the way it is done, the subtitler is not wrong. But we as specialists, we study, we debate, we discuss, we talk about norms and methodologies, techniques, strategies. We would like to debate this, and we would like to say, okay, Arab film, particularly Egyptian films, particularly the old generation of Egyptian directors. For example, there is Al-Qahira 30. Watch this film. You want to learn about visual metaphors? Al-Qahira 30. Naguib Mahfouz in cinema. I mean, this is a school of thought. أفلام نجيب محفوظ تم تحويلها إلى أفلام مصرية بكبار المخرجين المصريين. للأسف, I would like to see the same novels being done again, a remake. يعني نفس الفيلم يتعمل مرة ثانية كل 20 سنة. المفروض القصص الكبيرة نجيب محفوظ والروائيين الآخرين أفلامهم تعاد تصويرها مرة أخرى بتفكير آخر، بإخراج آخر، بتقنية أخرى. Back to the question, forgive me, I don't remember who asked the question. Should the subtitler do something about it? Should we develop norms for it? Absolutely. Maybe this is your task, the new generation. You should work on this, debate and discuss how films are subtitled and what should be done about this. Should we add a third line, for example? I argued this in my PhD and I said, what's wrong with the third line? We should add the third line because it explains more. The enjoyment would be doubled if the viewer watches and understands this. But I didn't put it in the PhD because towards the end I realized, I asked myself, what is the purpose of subtitling? It is to help the average person, the average viewer, to enjoy a film. The viewer is not going to set an exam on Ihsan Abdul Quddus and how he wrote رواية في بيتنا رجل, or how Henry Barakat turned that film. There is, for Ayman,
yes,
there is a book I would like you to read.
Yes, please.
Can you see this?
The Encyclopedia of Novels into Films, into film?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is Tibbets and Welsh. If you send me an email, I can send you the reference for it. But it is not an old book. It is actually a recent one, sort of. 2005. It's a good one. The first two chapters, you don't have to read the whole encyclopedia. The first two chapters gives you some insights into the filmography, the cinematography, what directors do to make the shift from the written word, which is monodimensional, not multi-dimensional, monodimensional, into the multi-dimensional format of film. In other words, and let me close with this thing. Rest assured that you are dealing with multi-modal material. It is not mono-dimensional. And you must build the confidence to say, it is clear. It doesn't need me to say anything. You should actually, okay, بالعربي. All right. Have you watched a subtitled film?
Yes, of course I did.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you have. It is a tiring exercise. It is not easy on the eye. It is not easy on the brain. It is not enjoyable. It is a lot better to watch the movie and to let yourself swim with the flow of the film. That's why a lot of nations, a lot of countries prefer dubbing to subtitling. I mean, the Americans are probably right. And what's his name? Yes, Egoyan and Balfour. There is that's also another interesting book, Subtitles.
Okay, I can read subtitles, but not the rest.
That's the name. I will send them to Dr. Hammouda, and these two references. They are there's also one chapter only in this book. It's an interesting book, but talks about why Americans don't like subtitled films, and they don't pay much attention to it, and also some section about how Hollywood regards the Oscar for the best foreign film. Where did that come from? Foreign means not American, not English. A film is an experience, and subtitles are wonderful, but again, for a certain level of film literacy. You want to listen to the music. You want to listen to the tone of voice of the Indian film, the song and dance. I mean, if it is dubbed, can you dub Indian films? You lose so much flavor.
Exactly, that's the point. You actually change the very nature of the film every time you apply dubbing or sometimes censorship to the subtitles.
All right. Yes. I knew that there was something I missed. Censorship. Okay. Subtitlers cannot censor the film. I'm just a translator. They ask me to subtitle a film. I do it. It's not my job to censor anything. There is self-censoring.
Exactly. That's the point. Yes.
Yeah, in the sense that I know I am the product of my own culture, and I know that in Alexandria or in Egypt, we do not tolerate bad language, the slurs on our TV, on our screens. So I can find a better word, a more modern word for the F word, but if tabban lak aw alayka al-la'na has been in the culture for more than 4 decades, for almost 8 decades now, I should stick to that. The young boys picking the F word and they think it is the equivalent of tabban lak, and they say this among themselves, what would I do? Nothing. I will let it go. Sometimes in life you have to let it go. It depends on how old the boy or the young person is. Have a word with them. And look, kids, boys, girls pick things from mom and dad, from the brothers, from the street, from TV. I mean, I remember this. My niece was 4 years old, and I was visiting her mother, my sister, and she offered me lunch, and I said, okay, thank you. She asked me, would you please ask the little one to have lunch, to have a bite with you? She hasn't eaten anything all morning. I said, okay, come on, darling, would you like to eat something with me? No. Why not? I am following a strict regime. Now, she was 4. Where did she get that from? Obviously from television. Kids pick these things, and amla regime. I mean, obviously, they pick things from television, so you talk to them. Now, one last thing before I stop here, censorship. Every country, every culture, not just the Arab TVs or Egyptian TVs. Australia has its own censorship. Every country in the world, every democracy, even the United States of America has its own censorship. Japan has its own censorship. Korea, Italy, China, Russia. Now, these things, I don't know about Brazil. I have no idea. But these countries I mentioned, I know for a fact that I read a research about censorship in these cultural settings. We have to accept that. Some censorship is not to your liking, not to your experience. You would like more freedom, but you have to think outside your immediate circle. You are, who was it? Pushkin, who said the translators are the postmen of something. As a translator, you are a torchbearer. You bring knowledge to the local culture from a foreign culture. Yes, but you are not the gatekeeper. You are not the one who says yes or no. You cannot cut things. You work quite often. You work with a manager who will review your work, so deal with your work. Now, I know that technology has changed in the digital age. Now there's software that allows me to work from my own home, and I can subtitle things. Don't have a boss anymore. I don't even have a reviewer. I mean, this is the age we live in, but as a professional, there is self-censorship. I know what the culture allows me to do. That's one thing. Finally, the other thing is that I work with a colleague or a partner, and they are the sounding board. I always ask for a second opinion, and I am surprised. I get it wrong so many times, and a second opinion alerts me. Not necessarily that I was entirely wrong, but a second opinion is a blessing. It's a good thing to have a close colleague, partner, or friend that you trust their judgment. And thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
An expert like you is always a blessing. Okay, I'm aware of time. It's now 1 p.m. Tunis time. What time is it now in Sydney?
It is 10 o'clock at night. Look, I'm enjoying this. I'm fine. I'm happy. Please.
Thank you very much. So you can accommodate another round of 2 or 3 questions.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your generosity
Pleasure.
of your spirit. Okay, let's take Linda first. And then I can see Ayman. Do you like also, Ayman, to ask another question, or it is an old hand? Yes, Linda and then Amin. Abir. Linda, Amin, Abir. Please, Linda, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay, thank you very much. So actually, I have a question concerning translating poems, because I'm very interested in translating poems. And I'm working on a book. It is written by an Egyptian author for my dissertation. And not only I had to translate a poem, but it also had Egyptian words and expressions, and it was very challenging for me. So translators sometimes have to face the dilemma, if I may say, of translating poems. And it is very sensitive and delicate. So sometimes you cannot find the exact translation for that poem. And I was wondering if the translator should actually translate words as they are, or he or she can allow himself or herself to put her feelings and her own words into that poem. So what do you do in this case? I'm just wondering. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
By the way, I'm supervising Linda, and she raised so many questions related to the translation of poetry. And I hope that you have given some example of what you are saying. Can you recall or remember an example, Linda?
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
An example. Okay.
I can get back to you if, yeah.
Yeah.
If it is available,
I have
go ahead.
it ready.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So انت الامل اللي احيا بنوره عمره ما بيبعد يوم عن عيني. كانت قد اخبرته انه ولما اشوف حد يحبك احب اجيب سيرته وياه ياه and so on. So it's very challenging, but
can you read your attempt, Linda, in English?
Okay.
English?
You are the hope by which I live my day, and in your arms I must stay, she told him, whom you smitten shall never forget your name. It was after she told him, I became cold to the core. If someone loves you more than I do, how come insanity takes the throne of love? So it's not exactly the words that were put in Arabic, but I tried my best to transmit the words as they are, but I couldn't. I wanted to put my own feelings into that poem, and I really do try my best to do it. So what is your advice here? I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Linda.
Okay. Can I actually?
Yes,
sorry,
go ahead, please.
Yes. You did very well. Your best is actually very good, but you see, I guess I reflect on practice a lot because I am a researcher and I'm also a trainer. I have been lucky and blessed with teaching. Teaching, actually, I learn from my students. It's not just I learn from them how they make mistakes and how they get it right and get it wrong, but I learn how they think and why they go that way. Let me just get out of this and give you a quick example. One day I asked students about dictionaries, and I asked them to bring an Arabic-English dictionary the following week. So the following week came and everybody brought a dictionary. And of course, they were all different dictionaries. And I asked them, I would like you to reflect on how you managed to get this dictionary. And the reasons were varied. That was the only one they found. It was already in the house. It was my brother's. I bought it secondhand. I found it. I stole it. It was given to me. I borrowed it from the library. Things like this. And I asked, have you ever opened the dictionary and checked, is this the only dictionary out there? Are you comfortable using this dictionary? Does this dictionary appeal to you, answer your questions? Are you happy using this dictionary? Have you compared it with another dictionary? Because I am 100% sure that when you buy a jacket, you look at it, you try it on, you ask your wife, your daughter, your mom, your dad, you ask the cat if she likes the jacket on you or not, and you don't buy it. You go back the following week and you do the same thing again. Why is it with a dictionary you get whatever is available? Now, why am I telling you this story? Taste, knowledge, experience, confidence. The poem that you looked at, that you were translating, it is in Arabic. It's in Egyptian Arabic. It has a reference. It sounds like the poetry of a particular writer. It sounds like a famous song by Kulthum. وما أدراك ما Kulthum. لو أنا قلت أنت النعيم والهنا, the whole country could stop with just one sentence, one phrase. Ya zalimni. I mean, it's not just the one word. It evokes lots of feelings and meanings. So, are you wrong? Are you, or not wrong? Let me reverse it. How right were you in your translation? Like you said, do I just translate the words? It is safer if you do that. And you said, أنا عملت اللي علي أهو. بتقول كذا كذا وأنا قلت كذا كذا. أنا عملت اللي علي. واللي أنا قلته مش غلط. But be careful. Sometimes you are correct, but you're not accurate. Let me say that again. Sometimes when I translate, I am correct, because if we look at the word rich in the dictionary, it says غني. But we are translating something about agriculture. Rich مش غني, وإنما خصب. التربة الخصبة. نحن لا نقول التربة الغنية, وإنما نقول التربة الخصبة. It is correct and accurate. Sometimes you can actually be correct because the dictionary said so, but it's not accurate. So in translating poetry is a totally different ball game, and It's totally different languages. There is music in Arabic poetry. There is no music in English poetry. Of course, there is, but that is not appreciated as other languages do, like Arabic. English has gone beyond the internal music, particularly the modern poetry. It is more about meaning rather than الجرس أو الإيقاع أو الوزن أو البحر. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying it's two different worlds, two different cultures. الأذن العربية تنصت إلى الشعر وتطرب له. الأذن الأجنبية تسمع الشعر وتفكر فيه وتزنه بمعايير مختلفة عن المعايير العربية. أنا لا أقارن وأقول الشعر العربي أفضل. الشعر العربي أنا آخر واحد يتكلم عن الشعر العربي، ولكن أنا ابتديت مؤخرا على كبر أتذوق الشعر العربي واللغة العربية، وأنا أشعر بالأسف الشديد أن أنا أمضيت عمري كله بعيدا عن اللغة العربية. يعني لسه من أسبوع واحد فقط قرأت مقالة في منتهى البساطة عن اللغة العربية وكيف أنها نشأت في البادية في الصحراء، ما فيش فيها أي شيء من الحضارة. كل شيء كان لابد أن يختزل في اللغة، في الشعر العربي. ما فيش لا زخرف ولا في حضارة ولا بناء ولا معمار ولا أي شيء، وإنما في اللغة. وأنا شعرت بأن أنا صغير جدا، لأن لا أملك من اللغة العربية إلا السطح، ويا ريت السطح، لا القشرة من عمق اللغة العربية. مضيت عمري أتعلم لغات كثيرة، يعني الحمد لله مش بطال في اللي أنا حققته وفي اللي أنا وصلت إليه، ولكن اللغة العربية خسارة، العمر راح وأنا لم أتعلم أو لم أتعمق في اللغة العربية. عشان أنا أقدر أترجم الشعر، وأنا لا أستطيع أن أترجم الشعر، وأنا لا أستطيع أن أفيدك حتى في ترجمة الشعر، لأن أنا لم أصل إلى الأرضية التي تؤهلني للإجابة على هذا السؤال. لا أشعر أن أنا مؤهل إطلاقا أن أنا أستطيع، لأن لا أستطيع حتى الإجابة، ناهيك عن تقديم النصيحة. ولكن نعود إلى النقطة الأساسية، وهو لابد وأن المترجم يثق في نفسه ويدرك أن لكل لغة إيقاع وأذن وطرب. زمان كانوا بنسمي الغناء الطرب. اللغة صحيح بتتطور. زمان الحب كان اسمه الغرام، والغرام غير الحب، والطرب غير الغناء. كان زمان المغنية تجلس، فجاءت أم كلثوم ووقفت وبدأت في الغناء ولا تحرك ذراعيها ولا أيديها. بعديها تطور فن الغناء، فأصبح الآن فيديو كليبس. وأنا أذكر كنت بتحدث مع بنت أختي، وهي طبعا أصغر مني بكثير، وكانت تشتكي أنها ليس لديها الوقت لكي تسمع أغنية لأم كلثوم تطول إلى مدة ساعة. في هذا الزمن أغنية 5-3 دقائق. فأنا يعني تذكرت وقلت: أنت تشاهدين الأغنية ولا تسمعين الأغنية ولا تطربي ليها. وفرق كبير بين اسمع أغنية لكل المغنيات الكبيرات العظميات المشهورات الشهيرات، ولكن أنا لا أتذكر أي أغنية، كلهن جميلات ورائعات وكل حاجة، ولكن إحنا بنسمع أغاني أم كلثوم من 50 سنة، وما زالت مبيعات أم كلثوم أكبر من كل المغنيات العظيمات الأخريات. ولكن هذا ليس موضوعنا. موضوعنا ترجمة الشعر. أنت بتستطيعي أنك أنت بتبحثي في خلفية الشاعر ولماذا كتبت هذه القصيدة والصور الشعرية، وربما بالخبرة أنت بتستفيدي، وربما تستطيعي أنك تضمني في الترجمة كلمة إنجليزية تعني شيء معين، ربما أغنية I don't know أغنية مثلا مشهورة للبيتلز، توم جونز، إلفيس بريسلي، مارايا كاري، ويتني هيوستن. كلمة تحل محل كلمة في العربي ربما تساوي أو تثير الشجن في القارئ الإنجليزي. أعتقد هذا يعني حد معلوماتي في هذا الموضوع، وآسف للإطالة.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me take Hanem El-Farhati, and then Amin Fajari, and then Wael Ben Ali. Hanem. I know you are looking for the hand. You couldn't find it.
Yes, I was trying my best to find it really, but I couldn't. And then I have to ask all the audience. For some reason, it disappeared from my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hello, Hanem. How are you?
I just wanted to say hello and thank you for all this very good discussion. Although I should be honest and say I joined late. I had some meetings to finish, and then I really wanted to catch up and just say thank you so much. It seems that the discussion is really, really good, and I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you for your
questions
visit.
to ask. I just want to greet from Leeds and say yes, very good to see you both, and all the audience, of course.
Thank you, Hanem. Thank you, Hanem. Amin, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Gamal, and thank you, Dr. Salhi, as well. I have just a brief question about the technology aspect. I'm not sure if we talked about that before, but I was wondering if Dr. Gamal, if you have any recommendations for somebody who, like me, who's exploring this subtitling field for first time. Any recommendations of softwares? I know there are many softwares out there, and if we're looking for one, what should we look for? Thank you.
Thank you, Amin.
Thank you very much.
Can we take Wael, the last question, perhaps,
yes.
Dr. Gamal? Yes. Wael, please.
Hi, Dr. Gamal. It's a pleasure having you with us today. Well, actually, you have already answered an important part of my question. Well, my question is, do you think that the translator should be passive or active while subtitling? You know, most of times movies are an attempt to diffuse a foreign culture or a political attitude through fallacies. For instance, what I like is that the Arab subtitlers insist on translating the word Israel to Palestine. So you know that subtitling is like importing a foreign and different materials to your own culture and civilization. So is the translator supposed to protect and censor these attempts to contaminate and manipulate the culture, or just to be passive and faithful to the original text? And thank you very much.
Thank you, Wael. Abir, please, can you ask your question quickly? Last one.
Okay, thank you, sir. My question is about subtitling religious videos. For example, I don't know, Khutbat al-Jumu'ah. Once I had a video about one imam who was giving Khutbat al-Jumu'ah, but it was so difficult. So what are the main, I don't know, things that we have to do with that? If you could advise. Yeah,
thank you. Thank you. Dr. Gamal, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Actually, I will start with the last question, and if I forget something, remind me, please. خطبة الجمعة أو أي فيلم أنا بأشعر إنه في رسالة بالفيلم الأجنبي بيحاول تمريرها. أنا دوري إيه؟ أنا دوري مترجم. أنا مش بشتغل في هيئة الاستعلامات أو هيئة الرقابة أو المخابرات أو وزارة الثقافة أو المركز القومي للترجمة أو بيت الحكمة أو أي شيء. أنا مترجم، ولكن أنا مواطن، وفي هذا العصر أنا لازم أكون أكتف وأكون لي دور في المجتمع، وشغلي مش منعزل عن المجتمع. وهذا يثير نقطة أخرى، وهي نقطة الانتماء المهني. أنا أفضل أني أنا أنتمي إلى كلية الترجمة، إلى الجامعة، إلى نقابة المترجمين، إلى نقابة المترجمين السينمائيين، أو أني أنا أكتب مش لازم بحث أكاديمي، ولكن رسالة إلى مجلة الترجمة في البلد اللي أنا عايش فيها، أو أحضر ندوة أو أشارك في مؤتمر الترجمة. أنا لي رأي في وضع الترجمة في المحيط العربي، أنه هو أكاديمي أكثر منه مهني. يعني كافة المؤتمرات عن الترجمة يغلب عليها الطابع، لا مش يغلب، كلها في الواقع كلها أكاديمية. ما فيش نقابة أو رابطة أو مجموعة من المترجمين المحترفين الممارسين قاموا بتنظيم ندوة للترجمة المهنية العملية. أنا لو ترجمت فيلم أمريكي أو قمت بتجربة ترجمة بيتش قصيدة شعر أو خطبة الجمعة، لازم أنا أعود نفسي على الكتابة مقالة من صفحة واحدة ألخص فيها التجربة، أسأل فيها الأسئلة اللي أنتوا تفضلتوا بها، أو أثير هذه المشكلة. أعمل إيه يا جماعة؟ دلوني الحل إيه؟ أنا كنت صح ولا غلط؟ تجربتي مع تجربتك مع تجربتك مع تجربته هو كلها بتشكل الخبرة المجتمعية التونسية. لما التوانسة يقعدوا مع المغاربة والمغاربة يقعدوا مع المصريين والمصريين يقعدوا مع السوريين، هذه الخبرات المحلية تجمع وهتصب في بوتقة واحدة. هنلاقي عندنا لائحة للترجمة، دورية للترجمة، مؤتمر دائم للترجمة، ثقافة للترجمة. ساعتها هنعرف بالضبط دور المترجم في المجتمع شكله ايه. نعود إلى نقطة خطبة الجمعة بسرعة. هذا موضوع متخصص، أنا مش هأقبل عليه بسهولة. لازم أعرف بالضبط خطبة الجمعة لها خطاب معين، لها تعابير معينة، مصطلحات معينة. أنا عارف أن خطبة الجمعة في أبسط صورها اللي هي لها الاستشهاد بالحديث والاستشهاد بكتاب الله، وفيها دعوة إلى الإصلاح أو الصلاح والخير. مظبوط، لكن في مصطلحات وفي تعابير، وممكن أنه الخطيب يخرج برا الموضوع ويعود. أنا بأترجم، بعمل سبتايتلينج. دور السبتايتلينج ايه؟ مين اللي بيسمع هذا الكلام؟ ربما مسلم ولكن يتحدث باللغة الغير العربية، وربما غير مسلم لا يتحدث العربية ولا يعرف أي شيء عن الإسلام، بس حابب يعرف هم بيقولوا إيه في خطبة الجمعة. طيب أنا لازم أفكر، استحالة أن أنا أترجم كل شيء. أولا خطبة الجمعة بتكون سريعة، ثانيا استحالة أن أنا أضع 27 خط على سطر على الصورة، لأنه أي فيلم عبارة عن تجربة بصرية قبل ما يكون عن تجربة سمعية. فلازم أنا ألخص ولازم أختصر ولازم أوافق وأقتنع وأكون راضي وقلبي مطمن وأكون مسامح نفسي إن أنا أحذف بعض الأمور. استحالة. جربيها أنت، جربي تترجمي كل شيء على السبتايتلينج.
صح، أنا جربتها بس بعدين خبرت اللي أعطاني الشغل أنا آسفة ما أقدرش أعمل كده، بس هو كان متفهم يعني لأنه هي كانت صعبة. صح.
أوكي. أنا طبعا من الصعب ان احنا ارفض. انا مش معقول ارفض الشغل، لازم اشتغل عشان اطور من نفسي. حتى لو كان الشغل ببلاش بدون اي عائد مالي، لازم انا كون ان انا ترجمت واشتغلت وقدمت الشغل، ده احساس مختلف تماما عن ان انا اقعد اكون هاوي واترجم اشياء بدون اي تقدير مهني. يعني ان الناس فعلا الفيلم اللي انا ترجمته اتعرض، ده تجربه تختلف تماما عن الفصل الدراسي والتدريب. كلمة أخيرة في هذا الموضوع. هذا يعني أن أنا لما يعرض علي أفلام متخصصة، سواء كانت أفلام وثائقية أو تسجيلية أو علمية أو كرتون للأطفال أو خطبة الجمعة أو خطبة سياسية أو حديث مجلس النواب، رئيس الجمهورية، الملك، رئيس نادي الزمالك، بلاش رئيس نادي الزمالك، في بعض الناس لما بتتكلم بيبقى الحديث بتاعها مثير لا يساعد المترجم. في بعض الشخصيات، مش لازم يعني الشخصيات تكون مثيرة للجدل، ولكن بتكون مثيرة ربما مثيرة للجدل، أنه كلامها ممكن يحمل على أكثر من معنى، فبالتالي أنا حقع في الخطأ من قبل ما أشتغل فيها. فالسؤال، هل أنا أستطيع أن أستغنى عن هذا الشغل ولا لأ؟ لأنه لو أنا ترجمته ربما أنا أضع نفسي في موقف أصعب بكثير عن الاستغناء عن هذا الشغل، وإن كان يعني هذه المشكلة مش في بداية حياتك المهنية. إن شاء الله يعني تكتسب الخبرة وتصل إلى مستوى أعلى، وتلاقي إنه في بعض الأحيان ربما من الحكمة إنك أنت تستغني عن هذا الشغل، لأن مركزك ومكانتك وخبرتك لا تستحمل إنك أنت تقعي في مشاكل مع ترجمة شيء معين، حتى وإن كان خطبة الجمعة أو فيلم مشهور أو فيلم مثير للجدل. ننتقل الآن لنقطة إسرائيل.
شكرا.
أوكي، عفوا. أنا مترجم، والمترجم لازم يتعامل بمهنية مع المادة السمع بصرية اللي أمامه. لو أنا عندي شعور إنه هل أنا أترجم كلمة مستوطنات إسرائيلية في الضفة الغربية مستوطنات ولا أترجمها مستعمرات؟ هل أنا الفيلم بيتكلم عن فرضنا مثلا أي فيلم أمريكاني، وانتم تعرفوا الفرق بين أمريكاني وأمريكي. المهم فيلم من أمريكا ويذكر فيه إنه البطل حيروح إلى إسرائيل، هل أنا أقول حيروح إلى فلسطين ولا إسرائيل؟ It's a very interesting question. أنا أفضل أن أقول حيروح إسرائيل، لأنه المجال لا يستدعي أن أنا أقول فلسطين، ولكن في نفس النفس وأنا بتكلم أنا حأنظر في المحتوى الفلسطيني على الإنترنت، وحأكون مدرك إلى ليه فيسبوك بتمسح المحتوى الفلسطيني من على الإنترنت، والتراث الفلسطيني معرض للخطر على أرض الواقع، طمس الهوية الفلسطينية في حتى علامات المرور وأسماء المدن، مش بس المدينة اتغير اسمها إلى أسماء عبرية، ولكن أيضا الإشارة إليها باللغة العربية اتشالت من على لوحات الطريق. ده موضوع آخر. أعتقد أنه إحنا كمترجمين ممكن نتكلم في هذا الموضوع، وممكن إحنا يعني نظهر بعض النضج في التعامل مع هذا الموضوع، ونشوف أنه أحسن إن مجرد نقول بس السفر إلى فلسطين. صحيح إخواننا الأوروبيين كانوا، وهذه النقطة أثيرت في أول مؤتمر عن الترجمة السمع بصرية في ستراسبورغ في يونيو 1995. كان في مسلسل، أعتقد المسلسل كان نسيت اسم المسلسل، كان بيترجم إلى الألمانية، وفي بدل ما يقولوا مجرمين قالوا Palestinians. أنا في رأيي ده كان تعبير رخيص أو سياسة رخيصة. مش المفروض أنها تضايق الفلسطينيين ولا تضايق العرب. المترجم عاجز فاشل. أنا مش هتضايق أو أزعل أو أحزن على شيء. ممكن أنا في طرق الواحد يظهر بها هذه الإساءات، ولكن أنا كشغلي كمترجم زي ما اتفقنا إنه الترجمة السمع بصرية، ترجمة الأفلام هي ترجمة علشان تعطي الفرصة لواحد لا يتحدث لغة الفيلم الأصلية إنه يتعرف على الفيلم ويستمتع به، ما هيش ترجمة تحريرية. فبالتالي أنا مش بترجم 100% من النص، وإلا إحنا مش بنتكلم على multimodal translation، أنا بتكلم على written translation. نعود إلى النقطة الأخيرة اللي هي لأمين أعتقد، اللي هي البرامج والجانب التقني والتكنولوجي للسبتايتلينج. في كل كمبيوتر في حاجة اسمها خاصة في الناس اللي عندها بي سي مش ماكنتوش، فيديو ميكر. فيديو ميكر برنامج مجاني موجود جوه الكمبيوتر بتاعك. داخل الكمبيوتر في فيديو ميكر. حاول انك انت تكتشف طريقة استخدام ازاي تضع كلمات، يعني تضع تكست على الصورة، وانت هتتعلم الجانب التقني من وضع الترجمة على الشاشة. في سبتايتل ورك شوب، في على الماك اسمها ايه؟ هي موجودة تحت، موجودة. I cannot find it. لو انت عندك ماك بوك هتكون موجودة subtitle something. انا مش لاقيها قدامي، لكن هذه برامج مجانية موجودة على الكمبيوتر بتاعك، فانت ممكن تفتح الكمبيوتر وتحاول تتعلم على هذه. في برامج انت ممكن تشتريها، لكن انا بفضل ان احنا نتعلم على كافة الابليكيشنز او الابس اللي هي موجودة داخل الكمبيوتر عندي بدون اي تكلفة، لحد انا ما يعني على درجة أعلى شوية أو ثقة أكبر، وأشتغل على برامج زي وين كابس أو أي حاجة ثانية ممكن أنا أحصل عليها إما برخصة أو لو اتصلت بالتلفزيون. ولا يعني لا تشعر بالخجل انك انت تتصل بالتلفزيون الرسمي او القنوات الخاصه وتقول لهم انا متخصص في الترجمه السمع البصريه واحب اتعلم. هعمل اول فيلم بدون اي مقابل، واتعلم من خبرتكم انتم والسياسات واللوائح، واعطيكم انا خبرتي ومجهودي، وربما يكون في يعني فتحه خير وتشتغل معهم على طول. ان لم يكن فعلى الأقل أنت تعرفت على السوق ماشي إزاي.
أشكرك جزيل الشكر دكتور محمد جمال أو محمد جمال بتونسي، وفي اسمك ينبت الجمال، جمال الروح وجمال الكلام. And I would like to safely say that today we have been very lucky and blessed to have with us a true seeker of knowledge, a person who is obsessed by the makings of cinema and films. And we have learned a lot today from this obsession and passion. And we have also been blessed to have with us a professor who is a trainer and who is very capable of relaying knowledge very smoothly and a very simplified way for novice subtitlers and translators. Thank you. You have started your presentation by giving an example of a film from Egypt, and you are from Egypt, the country of the Nile. في بيتنا رجل. And I would like to quote this by way using intertextuality to say في بيتنا اليوم عالم جليل بكل المقاييس. في بيتنا هذا نحن نشيد بيوت للمعرفة في هذه اللقاءات وهذا الحديث من أو على ضفاف الترجمة. But I would like to go back to one observation you made on, because when you were giving examples and your presentation is also practical, you because you are a trainer, so this is the mindset of a trainer, thinking of practical stuff, not just theory. You mentioned الضفة الغربية, and you mentioned Israel, or how to translate it. I am a practicing conference interpreter as well, and I remember that I think last year or the year before last year, I was called to interpret a meeting, a negotiation between Palestinians and Israelis, facilitated by a European country. في الوقت كنت مدعو إلى ترجمة بالهمسية إلى اللغة العربية، لأن هناك مفاوض واحد في عدة مفاوضات حول المياه، حول بعض الأمور الأخرى، وحول أيضا المعابر. وهناك شخص فلسطيني مفاوض مختص في المعابر يفهم قليلا اللغة الإنجليزية ويحتاج إلى ترجمة عندما يتحدث اللغة العربية. فبطبيعة الحال الاجتماع كان سري، ولم أكن أعرف غير كلمة واحدة هي موضوع الاجتماع المعابر، ولا شيء غير ذلك. ذهبت ثم بدأت أترجم له همسيا whispering، وبعد أخذ الكلمة ثم بدأ يعلن عن احتجاجه من استخدامي لترجمة أحد المعابر في فلسطين، وهو معبر Erez Crossing. The moderator was using it in the Israeli part, and I had no clue what is the equivalent in Arabic. I thought it is the Erez. No, نحن ما بنقول هلا إريز، هذا معبر فلسطيني، هذا معبر بيت حنون. And he was protesting like that. With a bit of experience, I knew that I was not the person who is targeted by that statement. And always the interpreter is the weak point, the weak link in that cycle or interpreted event. I knew that, so I didn't react. I said, I'm sorry. From now on, thank you for the information. From now on, I will translate it as Ma'bar Beit Hanun, Erez Crossing. It happened like that. And then when the first meeting ended, or the coffee break, I went to the restroom and he was behind me. I says, معلش يا أخويا تونسي، أنا مش أنت المقصود، بس لازم المودريتور يقول معبر بيت حنون أيضا لحتى يكون محايد. I told him I knew that. كنت أعرف إنه مش أنا المستهدف. تفضل.
Yeah, this is a very good point. على أكثر من مستوى. المستوى الأول إنه المفروض لو إحنا عايشين في عالم مثالي، إنه المترجم يكون عنده فكرة عن المؤتمر ويكون متخصص في نفس المجال. صحيح. إذا كنا إحنا بنقول المترجم الشاعر لازم يكون شاعر، طب إيش معنى مترجم السياسي أو الدبلوماسي ما يكونش متخصص في هذا المجال؟ أنا مش لازم أكون دبلوماسي عشان أكون أنا مترجم في هذا المجال، ولكن على الأقل يعطوني فكرة عن الموضوع. صحيح السرية يعني جانب مهم جدا من الترجمة.
دكتور جمال سامحني لا أقاطعك، لأنك أنت مختص في الترجمة الدبلوماسية وأنت مترجم في الدبلوماسية. كيف تتصرف مع الوضعيات من هذا القبيل، خاصة السرية والوثائق السابقة للاجتماع، التحضيرات؟
السرية جانب في غاية الأهمية. أنا لا أستطيع أن أتعامل معه أو أطلب أي شيء. طالما قال الموضوع confidential سري، خلاص أنا حامل إيه. ولكن مع الخبرة أنا ممكن أتوقع أو يعني أخمن في تخمين بدون شك أو التوقع بمؤتمرات سابقة. أنا من أعتقد من سن 11 وأنا اتعلمت إني لازم عندي مفكرة تكون بجواري كل يوم. كلمة كل يوم مش مبالغة، كل يوم. وعندي والحمد لله يعني ما زالت مفكراتي من سن 11 لحد الآن كلها موجودة معي. هذا جانب في غاية الأهمية للمترجم الحر، إنك أنت بتدون خبراتك مش مش للأجيال اللاحقة ولا للأجيال السابقة ولا لأي حد، هي ليك أنت بتدونها علشان تعود لها في وقت الحاجة. ربما تمر سنوات وسنوات طويلة بدون الحاجة إليها، لكن أنا أؤكد لك أن هي تجربة، عادة حميدة، أنك أنت يكون عندك مفكرة. أنت مش بتكتب مذكراتك، أنت بتكتب يومياتك.
صحيح.
في فرق اثنين، المفكرة لليوميات مش للمذكرات. إن شاء الله ما يبقى عندك 100 سنة اقعد اكتب مذكراتك زي ما أنت عايز، لكن طالما أنت بتمارس الترجمة، أنت بتكتب يومياتك، بتكتب فيها أسئلة واستفسارات، بتكتب فيها تجارب عشان تتذكرها المرة القادمة. لو واحد اندفع وانفعل وقال لك الاسم المعبر بيت حانون مش معبر إيرتس، انت بحكم خبرتك هتدرك انه هذا الانفعال مش ليك انت، مش ضدك انت، ما هواش هجوم عليك انت. بالنسبه للشق الثاني الدبلوماسي، ان شاء الله كلكم هتصلوا الى درجه هتبقوا انتوا المترجم الرئيسي او الاول، وهيكون هتتمتعوا بالثقه الجهه اللي انتوا بتعملوا فيها، فهيكون في نسبة من الثقة، فهيكون في معلومات مسبقة عن مجال الترجمة. هيبقى ربما الخطاب نفسه اللي هيلقى هيمرر إليك، أنت هتطلع عليه.
Dr. Gamal, perhaps, excuse me to step in here, perhaps there is a big difference between a staff member, interpreter as a staff member, and a freelance interpreter. If you are working for the institution, you will be having the trust of the employer, but if you are a freelancer, there is still some doubt in the beginning, and
أكيد. أكيد، ولكن مع مرور الوقت لو فرضنا ان النظام في استراليا مش ستاف، هو فريلانسنج، ولكن انت بتبني علاقه مع الجهه اللي انت بتترجم فيها، فبتتمتع بنوع من المصداقيه، بنوع من الاعتماد، بنوع من الثقة. فهذه الثقة هي اللي بتسمح ليهم ان هم لما يتصلوا فيك يقول لك الموضوع هيكون كذا وكذا، الخطاب او البيان اللي هيلقى بعدين هو للاطلاع، ولكن وفقا لقانون السرية او لوائح الثقة، بحيث انك انت لا تتحدث عنه اطلاقا، وبيعطيك اياه تقرأه مرة واحدة وياخده مرة ثانية. بس بالنسبة لي أنا كمترجم ثوري أو مترجم إعلامي أو دبلوماسي، تكفي كثيرا أن أنا اطلعت عليه. فالخبرة في غاية الأهمية، والخبرة هي اللي بتطمن الواحد وبتخلي حسن اتخاذ القرار.
صحيح.
إن أنا هترجم هقول مستوطنات مش مستعمرات، أو العكس هقول إسرائيل أو فلسطين، أنا هتخذ القرار السليم في الوقت السليم.
جميل.
هذه هي الخبرة.
ولكن أحيانا هناك نقص في الخبرة، وهناك الكثير من الطلبة من الذين اكتسبوا خبرة في الترجمة وأصبحوا متمرسين، ولكن أيضا هناك كما يقال هناك الغث، هناك السمين وهناك الغث، وهناك بعض الغث. وعلى سبيل الدعابة سأحكي لكم قصة. في سنين أيضا مضت أعطينا نص آخر للطلبة، كانت السنة الأولى جامعة، وفي النص كانت ترجمة تعريب يعني من الإنجليزي إلى العربي، وكان في النص يتحدث عن فلسطين ويتحدث عن المستوطنات ومستوطنات في الضفة الغربية أساسا. ف the text there is the expression in the English text, the occupied West Bank, and the student at that time, she was a female student, had no clue about West Bank. فترجمتها the occupied West Bank، البنك الغربي المشغول. goes occupy. So it is very literal translation. Anyway، أشكرك من جديد جزيل الشكر أستاذ الدكتور محمد جمال على هذا العرض الممتع وهذا النقاش الثري، وكلما حركنا نقطة إلا وأثرتنا وأثرت فينا رغبتنا في الاستمتاع والاستماع أكثر إلى حديثك الذي لا نروي منه أبدا. أخذتنا في رحلة كاملة في هذا الحديث على شطآن الترجمة السمع بصرية وحتى الترجمة الفورية أنهيناها، وخبرتك في الترجمة إجمالا. نحن سعداء جدا بهذا اللقاء، وأعتقد أن هذه من اللقاءات التي سيسجلها تاريخ هذه السلسلة وستبقى خالدة في أذهان الطلبة ما حييت وما زادهم الله في العمر. لذا وأريد أن أشكرك أيضا على كرمك وجودك في الوقت معنا. سيكون هناك لقاءات أخرى، وأن هناك سنناقش مع بعضنا البعض إن شاء الله إمكانية للتعاون، فرصة أخرى للتعاون. كان هذا الحديث هو حديث في على ضفاف الترجمة، في الترجمة مع عالم في الترجمة، باحث في الترجمة، مدرب في الترجمة، ممارس للترجمة، يحمل قبعات كثيرة، وبالتالي كلما سلطنا الضوء على بقعة إلا وأتى بنوره يسطع عليها ويخرج من الكلام درره ومن الخبرة ذهبها. النهاية ليست اليوم، ما زالت هناك لقاءات أخرى ولقاء آخر وتحدثت عن الفن وعن الغناء والطرب. وفي هذا المساء أتمنى أعرف أن هناك فارق الوقت سيكون عائقا أمام اجتماعنا من جديد، ولكن هي نجمة في مغنية أوبرا سوبرانو لبنانية معروفة جدا، هبة القواس، ستحدثنا عن الصوت أو العلاقة الوطيدة بين الصوت والمعنى والترجمة، وستغني لنا أيضا، وسنتحدث أيضا في هذا الصوت. وأنا أثارني أيضا صوتك الرخو الناعم الذي يعني تلقاه الآذان تلقيا حسنا. فهذا واضح جدا من التراجمة interpreters جمع ترجمان أن من تقنياتهم وفنونهم أيضا فنون تتعلق بالصوت، فنون بمعنى skills تتعلق بالصوت، حتى لا يكون الصوت صوتا يعني يصيب السامع بالضجر. وبالتالي سنتحدث عن هذه الأمور أيضا، عن فلسفة الصوت والمعنى ونقله أي الترجمة. أعطي إليك دكتور جمال كلمة الختام، وسأتوقف عن الكلام المباح عند هذا الحد، فالكلمة إليكم.
أنا أشكرك كثيرا على هذا الإطراء، هذا الكلام يعني أخجلتني في هذا الكلام. أنا لا أستحق كل هذا الكلام. أنا شاكر جدا، تحياتي لتونس العاصمة وتونس البلد. أنا شاكر على هذه الفرصة، وإن شاء الله يكون لنا لقاءات أخرى. دكتور صلحي، ده كان كرم كبير منك انك يعني تقدم لي هذه الفرصه للتقابل معكم والحديث معكم والاستماع الى الاسئله والاستفسارات عن الترجمه. الترجمه السمع البصريه او المالتي مودال ترانسليشن، مالتي ميديا ترانسليشن، عالم جديد. انا اعتقد انه هو في رأيي أنا حيكون هو المجال الجديد للترجمة. مش حيكون اسمه Translation Studies، ولا حيكون حتى اسمه Audio Visual Translation. في الغالب حيكون Multimedia Translation، وحيدخل تحت Digital Humanities اللي هي العلوم الإنسانية الرقمية. والسبب هو التكنولوجيا. دلوقتي كل واحد فينا معاه سمارت فون في إيده وفيها آب أو 2 أو أكثر للترجمة. ده ملخص بحث حينشر في بلجيكا إن شاء الله الشهر القادم، إنه كليات الترجمة لابد وأن تعيد النظر في طرق تدريس الترجمة والغرض من الترجمة، وليه الطلاب بيدرسوا ترجمة. انت مش بتدرس ترجمة عشان تقول عادل ذهب إلى مدرسة. لا، عادل ذهب إلى المدرسة أصبحت في فيديو من 5 دقائق، المدرسة بتضعه على الموقع المدرسة أونلاين علشان يوضح إيه هي فلسفة المدرسة. والأولاد والبنات بيروحوا على المدرسة وفي أصوات وفي رسومات أو في images أو في أغاني أو رموز داخل الفيلم من 5 دقائق فقط، ولكنها بتوحي وتشير إلى تجربة التعلم في المدرسة. عشان كده في رأيي أنا إنه الترجمة لابد وأن تتغير 360 درجة، بمعنى إن هي 360 درجة غلط، 180 درجة 180 درجة علشان تصبح الآن كلها رقمية، كلها بالتكنولوجيا الإخراج المتعدد الوسائط. وأتمنى لكم التوفيق، وأتطلع إلى فرصة اللقاء مرة أخرى، وأنا تحت أمركم في أي وقت. لو أقدر أعمل أي حاجة أستاذ الدكتور حمودة، أنا تحت أمرك في أي وقت.
الله يخليك.
شكرا على وتصبحون على خير.
شكرا جزيلا وتصبح على ألف خير. إلى اللقاء، مع السلامة. والشكر موصول أيضا للطلبة وللضيوف ولكل من تدخل ولكل من استمع استماعا حسنا. مثل خطب الجمعة لابد أن يبدأ الكلام ب يعني نبذ أو تنبيه من اللغو، يعني ومن لغى فلا جمعة له، ولكن لم يكن كلامنا لغوا إطلاقا، بل هو مفيد. أشكرك من جديد، وإلى لقاء قريب إن شاء الله. مع السلامة.